My husband died, and I kept sending his mom $200 every month because I promised him I would. But after 3 years, I accidentally overheard one phone call, and what she said made my blood run cold. I wasn't helping her. I was funding her lies. The day Ethan Carter died, the snow felt like the sky was trying to erase the world. Hannah stood in front of the church, staring at the closed casket as if her eyes could force it open. The scent of lilies and cold air mixed together, sweet and suffocating. Inside, the choir sang softly, but Hannah couldn't hear the words anymore. Everything sounded far away, like she was underwater. Ethan had been alive only 5 days ago. 5 days. He'd kissed her forehead before leaving for work and joked about how she always forgot her coffee on the counter. Then one call, one scream, one hospital hallway. Everything was gone. Hannah. She didn't respond at first. The voice felt like a needle in her grief. Hannah. Sweetheart. Margaret Carter touched her arm. Ethan's mother. Margaret wore black, but it wasn't the plain kind. Her coat had a sharp, expensive cut. Her pearl earrings glistened under the church lights. Even in tragedy, Margaret looked like someone who refused to appear small. Hannah forced herself to look at her. Margaret's eyes were red. Her lips trembled as if she might shatter. "My baby," Margaret whispered. "My Ethan." Hannah swallowed hard. She wanted to scream that Ethan was her husband, not a baby. But grief made her quiet. Grief made her soft. The pastor, David Cole, stepped forward and spoke about peace, about eternal life, about love living beyond the grave. People nodded, crying into tissue papers. Hannah felt none of that peace. Love didn't feel eternal right now. Love felt stolen. When the service ended, people lined up to hug her. "I'm so sorry. He was a good man." "You're so strong, Hannah." Strong? Hannah wanted to laugh. She didn't feel strong. She felt hollow, like the person she used to be had died too, and only a shell was left behind to accept condolences. Outside the church, the snow continued falling. Someone handed her gloves. Someone placed a scarf around her neck. Someone asked if she was eating. She didn't even know how to answer. Then Margaret pulled her aside toward the side parking lot, away from the crowd. "Hannah, we need to talk." Hannah blinked slowly, like waking from a nightmare. "Not right now." "Yes, right now," Margaret said, voice firm. "You're his wife. You need to hear this." Hannah's throat tightened. "Hear what?" Margaret's expression shifted. The tears disappeared, replaced by something sharper. Not grief. Calculation. "Ethan used to take care of me," Margaret said. "He paid my utilities. He helped with my mortgage. He handled things." Hannah's stomach turned. Margaret continued, "I have debts, bills, responsibilities. Now that he's gone," she stepped closer, "that responsibility is yours." Hannah stared at her like she'd misheard. "What?" Margaret's voice lowered, almost a whisper. "You heard me." Hannah's hands trembled. "Margaret, I can barely think. I just buried my husband. And I buried my son." Margaret snapped, then quickly softened her tone. "I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm being practical." Practical. At a funeral. Margaret sighed dramatically. "I'm not asking for much. Just $200 a month. That's it." Hannah's breath caught. 200 wasn't just 200. Not to a nurse with student loans. Not to a woman suddenly alone with rent, food, utilities, everything Ethan once split with her. Hannah shook her head. "I don't know if I can do that." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "If you loved Ethan, you'll honor him. He would never let me suffer." The words hit Hannah in her chest like a brick, because Ethan had said something similar, not in a demanding way, in a weak, dying whisper. 3 days before he died, when the hospital monitors beeped like alarms of fate, Ethan had squeezed Hannah's hand and said, "Promise me something." Hannah had leaned close. "Anything." Ethan's voice was shaky. "My mom," she's stubborn, "but she's still my mom. Please don't let her lose everything." Hannah had cried then too. "I won't. I promise." That promise came rushing back now like a trap closing. Hannah's eyes filled. She looked down at the snow by her feet, then back at Margaret. "I'll try," she whispered. Margaret immediately nodded, like she'd already won. Good. That's the right thing to do. Hannah felt sick, but grief made her agreeable. Grief made her weak. That night, Hannah sat alone in her apartment. Ethan's jacket still hung on the hook by the door. His shoes were still under bed. His toothbrush still sat beside hers like an insult. Hannah opened Ethan's closet and pressed one of his shirts to her face. It smelled like him. Soap, aftershave, warmth. She collapsed on the floor. "I don't know how to do this," she sobbed. "I don't know how to live without you." Her phone buzzed. A message from Margaret. "Don't forget what we discussed." Ethan wouldn't want his mother abandoned. Hannah stared at the message until tears blurred the screen. The next morning, she went to the bank and sent the first $200. Her finger hovered over confirmed transfer like it weighed more than her entire life. Then she pressed it, and as the receipt printed, Hannah whispered, "This is love." But love, she didn't know yet, was about to become her punishment. Because 2 years later, Hannah would walk into that same bank and overhear Margaret laughing on the phone, saying, "Don't worry, she'll keep paying. That foolish girl still thinks I'm struggling." At first, Hannah thought the payments would be temporary. A few months, maybe, until Margaret stabilized. But month after month, Margaret never stabilized, only demanded more. "Where is it?" Margaret would text, sometimes before Hannah's shift even ended. "Don't be late. It's the first of the month." Hannah worked longer hours to keep up. She became the nurse who always volunteered for overtime, the nurse who skipped lunch breaks, the nurse whose eyes looked exhausted even when she smiled. Jenna Brooks noticed first. Jenna was Hannah's best friend since high school, the kind of friend who didn't sugarcoat anything. She showed up at Hannah's apartment one evening carrying takeout and 2 sodas. "You look like you've been fighting demons," Jenna said, dropping the bag on the table. Hannah tried to laugh. It came out broken. "Feels like it." They ate in silence for a while. Then Jenna asked a question Hannah hoped she wouldn't ask. "You still sending Margaret money?" Hannah froze mid-bite. Jenna leaned forward. "Don't lie." Hannah sighed. "Yes." "How much?" 200. Jenna's eyes widened. "Every month." Hannah nodded slowly. Jenna slammed her fork down. "Hannah, are you serious? That woman has 2 working hands. She can get a job." Hannah's voice went small. "She's Ethan's mother." Jenna softened slightly. "Hannah, grief makes you easy to manipulate, and Margaret knows it." Hannah stared down at her food. "Ethan asked me to look out for her." Jenna leaned back, studying her. "Ethan wanted you to look out for her. He didn't want you to destroy yourself." That night, Hannah lay awake thinking about Jenna's words. But the next morning, Margaret called. "Hannah," Margaret said in that fake sweet voice, "I need you to increase it this month." Hannah sat up in bed, heart racing. "Increase it? Why?" Margaret sighed like Hannah was a slow student. "My heating bill is higher. It's winter. And my mortgage." "You said the mortgage was almost done." Margaret's tone sharpened. "Are you calling me a liar?" Hannah swallowed. "No, I'm just confused." "Well, don't be confused," Margaret snapped. "Just do what's right. Ethan would want this." That name again, Ethan, used like a weapon. Hannah's eyes burned. "I can't increase it, Margaret. I barely." Margaret cut her off. "Do you have any idea what it means for a mother to lose her son? He was my only support." Hannah whispered, "He was my husband." Margaret went silent for a moment. Then she said coldly, "And you can remarry. I can't replace a son." The line went dead. Hannah sat there shaking. She hated Margaret for that sentence. She hated herself even more for still sending the money after it. 2 months later, Hannah's car broke down. The repair cost $480. She stared at the mechanic's estimate like it was a death sentence. Without a car, she couldn't get to work. She thought about skipping the payment that month. Just once. But Margaret called her the same day. "You're not thinking of stopping, are you?" Margaret said. Hannah frowned. "Why would you ask that?" Margaret laughed lightly. Oh, I just know how widows are. They get emotional. They forget promises. I haven't forgotten, Hannah said quietly. Good, Margaret replied, because people are watching. Hannah's blood went cold. People? Yes, Margaret said casually. The church, the community. They know you're helping. Don't embarrass yourself. Hannah realized then this wasn't just about money. This was about control. She sent the $200 anyway. Then she took the bus to work for 2 weeks. One afternoon, after a 12-hour shift, Hannah stopped by the grocery store. She grabbed rice, eggs, and cheap soup, trying to stretch her budget. At checkout, her card declined. Declined. The cashier stared awkwardly. The line behind her grew impatient. Hannah felt humiliation crawl up her neck. She pulled out her phone, transferred money from her savings, and tried again. Approved. But her hands were shaking as she carried her groceries out. In the parking lot, she leaned against her car and cried. Not because of the declined card, but because she realized her kindness was turning into slavery. That weekend, she went to Margaret's house to drop off medicine she'd bought. Margaret opened the door, wearing a robe that looked too expensive for someone broke. Hannah's eyes drifted lower. On Margaret's wrist was a shiny bracelet, gold, glittering. Hannah recognized it immediately. It was not cheap. Margaret noticed her staring and quickly pulled her sleeve down. What? Margaret snapped. Hannah forced a smile. Nothing. But her stomach twisted. As Hannah walked back to her car, she turned, and there it was. A brand new iPhone on the kitchen counter, face up like a silent confession. Hannah's heart pounded. Her fingers tightened around her car keys. Jenna's warning replayed in her mind. Kindness without wisdom is self-destruction. Hannah drove home in silence, but her grief had changed into something else. Suspicion. And suspicion was about to become the beginning of the end. Hannah couldn't stop thinking about the bracelet or the iPhone. If Margaret was truly struggling, why did she look like she was upgrading her life? So the next month, Hannah decided not to send the money electronically. She would deliver in person. She told herself it was just being cautious, making sure Margaret received it. But deep down, she wanted to see something. Proof. On the first of the month, Hannah drove to Margaret's house with an envelope in her purse. Snow had melted, but the air still carried winter's bite. She parked 2 houses down. Margaret's driveway was empty. Hannah checked her watch. Strange. Margaret was usually home. She waited. 10 minutes later, a car pulled into the driveway. Hannah's chest tightened. It wasn't Margaret's old sedan. This was a newer SUV, dark, polished, expensive-looking. Margaret stepped out wearing a cream coat and sunglasses. She looked happy, not broke, not stressed. Hannah's heart thudded. She watched Margaret walk toward the house, laughing into her phone like a woman with no worries. Hannah couldn't breathe. She got out of her car and approached. Margaret froze mid-step. The smile vanished instantly. Hannah! Margaret forced a laugh. What are you doing here? Hannah held up the envelope. I brought the payment. Margaret's eyes flicked to it like it was prey. You could have just sent it. I wanted to check on you, Hannah said. Margaret sighed dramatically. Oh, Hannah, you're such a sweet girl. Sweet girl. Hannah looked at the SUV. Is that your car? Margaret stiffened. It's a friend's. What friend? Margaret waved her hand. A church friend. She's letting me borrow it. Don't interrogate me. Hannah smiled politely, but her skin felt hot. Okay. Margaret snatched the envelope. Thanks. Now I have errands. Errands. Hannah watched Margaret turn around and drive off. Something inside Hannah snapped. She followed, not like a crazy person. She told herself. Just to confirm, Margaret drove across town and parked in front of Spa. A spa. Hannah sat in her car, stunned. 10 minutes later, Margaret walked inside. Hannah's hands shook on the steering wheel. She waited. An hour passed. Then Margaret came out with 2 other women, laughing loudly. One of them carried shopping bags. Margaret's laughter, real laughter, hit Hannah like a slap. Hannah's grief screamed. How can she laugh when Ethan is gone? But another voice inside her whispered, because she's not suffering. You are. Hannah followed again. Margaret stopped at a high-end boutique. Hannah watched through the window as Margaret tried on a coat. The price tag was visible. $600. Hannah's vision blurred with rage. She thought of her car declining at the grocery store, thought of working overtime, thought of skipping meals, and Margaret was buying $600 coats. Hannah drove home shaking. That night, she called Jenna. Jenna answered immediately. Hannah? What's wrong? Hannah's voice cracked. You were right. Jenna sat up. What happened? Hannah explained everything. Jenna went silent for a moment. Then she said, Okay, now we stop playing nice. What do I do? Hannah whispered. Investigation, Jenna replied. You need facts, not feelings. The next day, Hannah visited Margaret's neighborhood and knocked on a neighbor's door, an older woman with kind eyes. Hi, Hannah said. I'm Hannah Carter, Ethan's wife. The woman's face softened. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Hannah forced a smile. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, has Margaret been okay? Financially, the neighbor frowned. Financially, she's fine. Hannah blinked. Fine. Yes, the neighbor said slowly. Her house was almost paid off years ago. She's been bragging about finally being free. Hannah felt her stomach drop. Bragging? Hannah drove home in silence. That night she opened her bank app and looked at her transfers. $200. Every month. For 3 years. She added it up. $7,200. Her throat tightened. She had sacrificed $7,200 to a lie. And she wasn't done yet. Because the biggest betrayal wasn't the money. It was what Margaret had been hiding since Ethan died. Logan Carter smelled like regret. He sat across from Hannah at a diner booth, staring at his coffee like it held answers. Logan was Ethan's younger brother. Same jawline, same blue eyes, but different energy. Ethan had been calm. Logan was restless, like he carried storms inside him. You said it was urgent, Logan murmured. Hannah nodded. I need you to tell me the truth. Logan's eyes flicked up. About what? Your mother. Logan stiffened. Hannah leaned forward. Logan, she's been lying to me. About money. About debt. About everything. Logan swallowed hard. You've been paying her? Yes. Hannah snapped. Every month. Logan's face changed, guilt spilling out like poison. Oh my God! Hannah's heart pounded. You knew. Logan rubbed his forehead. Not at first, but I found out later. Hannah's voice dropped. Then why didn't you tell me? Logan looked like he might cry. Because Mom told me not to. She said you'd leave us if you knew the truth. Hannah's hands clenched into fists. Logan whispered. She said you were just temporary. Hannah stared at him, stunned. Logan's voice cracked. I'm sorry. Hannah took a deep breath. What truth, Logan? Logan hesitated. Then he leaned closer, voice low. Ethan left something for you. Hannah's world tilted. What? Logan nodded slowly. Before he died, he had papers. A folder. He told Mom to give them to you. Hannah's throat tightened. She never gave me anything. Logan's eyes darted away. Because she hid it. Hannah felt like her chest was splitting open. What did Ethan leave? Hannah whispered. Logan swallowed hard. A life insurance policy payout, and he hesitated. Something else. What else? Logan's hands trembled. Property paperwork. Ethan bought land, Hannah. He wanted you secured. Hannah's eyes filled. Ethan had planned for her. But Margaret had stolen that security. Logan whispered. Mom claimed Ethan changed his mind. She said he didn't trust you. Hannah laughed bitterly through tears. Ethan trusted me with his life. Logan nodded. I know. Hannah stared at her hands. Where are the papers now? Logan hesitated. I don't know, but Mom keeps everything in storage. That night, Hannah didn't sleep. She searched Ethan's old things, boxes, drawers, closets. Then she remembered something. A small locked storage box Ethan kept under the bed. Ethan once joked, "That's where I keep my boring adult stuff." Hannah found it. The lock was broken. Her heart pounded. Inside were papers, some bank statements, some receipts, and a folder. A folder labeled in Ethan's handwriting. Hannah, only Hannah's breath caught. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside were copies of legal documents, insurance forms, property documents, a letter, but the final page was missing. The page with Ethan's signature, the page that made it official. Hannah stared at the empty space and whispered, "Margaret." Now she had proof, and she was done being the sweet girl. Detective Ray Miles didn't look like someone who believed in family drama. He sat in his office, calm, professional, eyes sharp like knives. Hannah placed a folder on his desk. "I'm not here for revenge," Hannah said. "I'm here for the truth." Detective Miles opened the folder slowly, reading. He nodded. "This is significant." Hannah's hands clasped tightly. "Ethan wanted me protected. His mother hid the documents, and she's been taking money from me." Detective Miles leaned back. "How much money?" Hannah swallowed. "About $7,000. He whistled softly. "That's not small." Hannah whispered, "It's not even the worst part." Detective Miles flipped through the papers again. "We'll need to verify this property. And the insurance." Hannah nodded. 2 days later, Margaret called Hannah screaming. "You went to the police?" Hannah's voice was cold. "You stole from me." "I did not steal." Margaret shouted, "You're trying to destroy Ethan's family name." Hannah laughed bitterly. "You destroyed it when you used his death as a business plan." Margaret's voice turned cruel. "I knew it. You're just like all widows. You pretend to love a man until he dies, then you want his money." Hannah's hands shook, but her voice stayed steady. "That money was Ethan's love letter to me, and you hid it." Margaret hissed, "You will are—" A knock interrupted. Hannah opened the door. A sheriff stood there with papers. "Hannah Carter?" he asked. "Yes," Hannah replied. "You're served," he said. Hannah stared at the papers. Margaret filed something against her. Defamation, harassment, whatever lie she could invent. Margaret's voice echoed through the phone like a devil's laugh. "Let's see who the town believes." And Margaret was right about one thing. The town did believe her. Church members started whispering about Hannah. She's attacking a grieving mother. She wants Ethan's money. She's selfish. Hannah felt alone, but she wasn't wrong, and being right is often lonely. Detective Miles later confirmed the truth Hannah feared. Margaret had cashed a check shortly after Ethan's death, a check tied to Ethan's policy. Hannah's stomach turned. "So she stole it," Hannah whispered. Detective Miles nodded. "Looks like it." Hannah's eyes filled with tears, not just a sadness, but rage. She thought about all the months she starved herself to send money. Margaret wasn't broke. Margaret was greedy, and she was scared now. Hannah met Margaret at Ethan's grave on purpose. It was a gray day. Wind cut through Hannah's coat. Margaret stood at the headstone, dressed in black again. But this time Hannah noticed Margaret's shoes were designer. Margaret turned when she heard Hannah's footsteps. "Oh," Margaret said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Here comes the saint." Hannah stopped in front of her. "Why?" Margaret blinked. "Why what? Why did you do it?" Hannah asked, voice trembling. Margaret laughed. "Because I deserved it." Hannah's eyes burned. "You deserved stealing from me? You deserved using Ethan's death to scam me." Margaret stepped closer. "I deserve my son's support. I raised him. I sacrificed for him. And I was his wife." Hannah snapped. "I loved him." Margaret's face twisted. "You can be replaced. A mother can't." Hannah's tears spilled. "I paid you for 3 years." Margaret shrugged. "And you'll keep paying if you know what's good for you." That sentence changed something inside Hannah. The last bit of softness died. Hannah leaned closer, voice low, dangerous. "You used my loyalty like a farm you harvested." Margaret sneered. "That's how the world works, Hannah. The strong take. The weak give." A voice interrupted. "Mom, stop." Logan stepped forward. Margaret froze. Logan's eyes were red. I'm done protecting you. Margaret snapped. You're my son. And Ethan was my brother, Logan replied. He wanted Hannah protected. You hid his papers. You stole his legacy. Margaret's voice became desperate. I did it for this family. Logan shook his head. No, you did it for yourself. Hannah's throat tightened. Then a car pulled up behind them. A sheriff stepped out. Margaret's face drained. Hannah Carter? The sheriff asked. Yes, Hannah replied. He turned to Margaret. Margaret Carter, you're being formally served. Fraud investigation. Margaret stumbled back like someone had punched her. No, she whispered. No, you can't. Hannah watched Margaret's knees buckle, and for a second, just 1 second, Hannah felt pity. Then she remembered the grocery store humiliation, the overtime shifts, the nights crying on the floor. Margaret didn't deserve pity. Margaret deserved consequences. The court case took months. Margaret fought like a cornered animal. She cried in court, played victim, claimed Hannah misunderstood. But evidence didn't cry. Evidence spoke clearly. Transfers, receipts, forgery traces, witness statements. Logan testified. I saw my mother hide documents, Logan said. She told me Ethan didn't trust Hannah. But Ethan loved Hannah. He wanted her safe. Margaret glared at him like she wanted to kill him. Hannah didn't celebrate when the judge ruled. She just exhaled because it wasn't joy. It was release. Margaret was ordered to repay part of what she took and face legal consequences. Not everything could be recovered. Some money was gone forever. But Hannah recovered something bigger than cash. She recovered her dignity. Outside the courthouse, Jenna hugged her tightly. I'm proud of you, Jenna whispered. Hannah's eyes filled. I feel empty. Jenna pulled back. Empty is better than trapped. Weeks later, Hannah visited Ethan's grave alone. She placed flowers gently on the snowless grass. I did what I could, she whispered. I fought, Ethan. She imagined his smile, his calm voice, and Hannah realized something. Ethan didn't want her to be a martyr. He wanted her to live. So Hannah did something Margaret never expected. She used part of what she recovered to start a small support program at her hospital for widows, a fund for women who had nobody. She named it the Ethan Carter Foundation. On opening day, Hannah stood in a small room with donated chairs. A few women sat listening. Women with tired eyes, women whose grief looked like hers. Hannah spoke softly. I know what it feels like to give and give until you disappear, she said. But I learned something. The women leaned closer. Hannah smiled through tears. Love is not measured by how much you sacrifice, but by how wisely you sacrifice. She paused. A good heart must have boundaries, Hannah finished. And for the first time in years, Hannah felt something that looked like peace. Not because she won, but because she finally chose herself. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you.